This month's Boomer podcast, Randy and I want to talk about one of the greats that has just passed away, and he was just one of those guys that he kind of made Canadian music a little bit along the way. He just infused himself into the fabric of our country. Randy, I'm going to let you take it from here. Who am I talking about? And what are we celebrating?
Well, thank you very much, Dave. We are celebrating the life and times of the late Ronnie Hawkins. And boy, what a musician he was. I'd like to, Dave, share with the audience, first of all, kind of his early life. Then we'll go into his career and then his later life. And near the end of the show, I want to ask you some of your favorite songs that Ronnie Hawkins did over his extremely successful career. Well, let's begin. Ronald Cornett Hawkins. He was born January 10th, 1935, in Arkansas. He was an American-Canadian rock and roll singer-songwriter whose career spanned over 50 years. Wonderful. Now, although he was born and raised in Arkansas, he found tremendous success in Ontario, Canada, and he lived there for most of his life, which a lot of people wouldn't know. He is considered highly influential in the establishment and the evolution of rock music right here in Canada. And wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Yeah, I would. I totally would. His band came north and started touring Canada, and he just never left, did he? He enjoyed it so much.
Absolutely. Now, also known as Rompin' Ronnie, Mr. Dynamo, or the Hawk. Yes, Indeed, that was certainly Ronnie Hawkins. And he was one of the key players in the 1960s rock scene in Toronto. He performed all across North America and recorded more than 25 albums. How good is that?
Did not know that. Wow.
And his hit songs included covers of Chuck Berry's 30 Days, which of course was re-entitled 40 Days, and Young Jesse's Mary Lou, a song about a gold digger. Other well-known recordings are a cover of Bo Diddley's Who Do You Love? Without the question mark, Hey Bo Diddley, and Susie Q, which were written by his cousin, rockabilly artist Dale Hawkins. And while we're on the subject of rockabilly, the music genre, rockabilly is the dominant music genre, or should be, for line dancers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Line dancing music has the central nervous system of rockabilly genre music.
Is it a derivative of the blues?
Absolutely correct, Dave. Absolutely correct. Yes.
Because it's got that feel to it a little bit too, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, Ronnie was a big Chuck Berry fan, so you can see that influence with the music as well.
Right on. Now, Hawkins, he was a talent scout and mentor of the musicians he recruited for his band, the Hawks. Roy Buchanan was an early Hawks guitarist on the song Who Do You Love? The most successful of his students were those who left to form the band. How good is that? Yes, indeed.
Canadians.
Yep. Others he had recruited later formed Robbie Lane and the Disciples, Janis Joplin's Full Tilt Boogie Band, Crowbar, Barefoot, and Skylark. All big bands. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know the rest of those bands he had helped create. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Ronnie in all of those bands in very, very good company. And here's a note just to share with our audience. As I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast there, Dave, Ronnie Hawkins was born on January 10th, 1935. 2 days after the birth of Elvis Presley. How good is that?
There you go.
He was the son of Flora Cornett. She was a school teacher. And Jasper Hawkins, his dad, was a barber.
Oh,
In 1945, his family moved to nearby Fayetteville, Arkansas. And as a teenager, Hawkins ran moonshine from Missouri to dry counties of Oklahoma in his modified Model A Ford, sometimes making as much as $300 a day. Wow.
back then, that's big, big, big money.
That's huge. Yeah. He had already formed his first band, the Hawks, when he graduated from high school in the year of 1952, following which he studied physical education at the University of Arkansas, where he dropped out just a few credits short of graduation. Gee, you would have thought he would have hung on, get those 2 extra credits, graduate fully, but
but he's a rock and roll guy. He's got to do the rock and roll thing.
That's right. Ronnie Hawkins enlisted in the United States Army, but he was required to serve only 6 months, having already completed ROTC training. His group, renamed the Blackhawks, continued to perform in the South until his enlistment ended. Then, when that happened, the band disbanded. So he went back to Fayetteville, and 2 days later, he got a call from Sun Records. Now,
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
He was the Blackhawks, and he was the only white member. He was the lead singer. That's what I have read. Do you know if that's true or not?
That is correct, Dave. That is absolutely correct.
And that was in the South, right? In the 1950s?
Yep. Early 1950, 52, 53, 54.
I can't even imagine. I mean, obviously, when he's in the military, probably more accepted culturally outside of that. That must have been a rough go for him and his band.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even imagine that in that era, being the lead singer and I think it speaks to Ronnie Hawkins. He just wanted to play with the best musicians he could find. He didn't care.
That's right.
Kudos to Ronnie. I mean, to do that in that era, especially, that's huge. That's massive.
Oh, yeah. It certainly is. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Sun Records at that time, they were the record company. Okay, you had Epic Records coming into vogue. You had Decca Records, but Sun Records at that time were the kingpin. So they wanted him to front the house session, and by the time he got to Memphis, the group had already broken up. But nevertheless, he took advantage of the opportunity to cut 2 demos, Lloyd Price's Lottie Miss Claudie and Hank Williams' A Mansion on the Hill. But the recordings, they didn't really get that too much attention. The demo session's guitarist, Jimmy Ray Luke Paulman, great guitarist, suggested that Hawkins join him at his home in Helena, Arkansas, in the heart of the Mississippi Delta region. And of course, as we both know, Dave, that was a hotbed of blues, rhythm and blues, and country music at that time. Now, immediately upon arriving in Helena, Hawkins and Pullman found Pullman's brother George, who was stand-up bass, and their cousin Willard Pop Jones was an excellent pianist. So they formed the band The Hawks. The drummer, Levin Helm, who had grown up in nearby Turkey Scratch, Arkansas.
What a name, eh?
Turkey Scratch.
So Levon Helm must have been pretty young when he joined.
Yes.
Because, wow.
He would have been probably 18 or 19, Dave.
Maybe, eh? Wow.
Yeah.
Because the Hawk's probably in his 30s by this point, early 30s.
Early 30s, about 32. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they went to Turkey Scratch, Arkansas, first played with the group of the Delta Supper Club in early 1957. Now, Hawkins' live act included backflips and a camel walk. Now, this camel walk was very similar back, was it 1983 when Michael Jackson did his famous moonwalk and those steps on the stage. Well, Ronnie Hawkins had his camel walk, which is totally different, but what a smoothie on the stage with this camel walk was pretty impressive. His stage persona gave him the monikers Rompin' Ronnie, which probably everybody knows Ronnie Hawkins as Rompin' Ronnie, and Mr. Dynamo. Hawkins.
Quick question, because that you intrigued me there with that, and I want to go into that a bit more. So his stage moves, were they? I'm thinking there was a combination of kind of Howlin' Wolf and Elvis.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like I think he was watching, right? Those other. I mean, obviously Howlin' Wolf's from the South too, but that's kind of where I'm thinking, wow, he's been watching these other guys perform, and he understood the value of being an entertainer early.
Exactly.
In order to draw that audience in. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Precisely, yeah. Hawkins, he also owned and operated the Rockwood Club in Fayetteville, where some of the rock and roll's earliest pioneers came to play, including Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, the Blue Suede Shoes, Roy Orbison, and Conway Twitty. Like, these are all superstars in their own right before they hit superstardom. So definitely Ronnie Hawkins in very, very good company. Following Helm's graduation from high school, Levon, he joined the Hawks, and they went to Canada, where the group met with tremendous success. On April 13th of 1959, they auditioned for Morris Levy, who is owner of Roulette Records in New York. And Roulette Records, they were vying for the top spot between them and Sun Records. Well, hey, Roulette Records out of New York were not shabby either. Only 4 hours later, they entered the studio and recorded their first record tracks. Now, the first single, 40 Days, was a barely disguised knockoff of Chuck Berry's 30 Days, with the song Mary Lou by Young Jesse on the B-side. But it reached number 26 on the pop charts, becoming Hawkins' biggest hit. Wow.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. So they started their first show. You said that they came north, and was it 1958 they came into Canada?
1958. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. And again, right? And he just, I saw a piece where they said, where he talked about, I think it was on, I think maybe it was on George Stromolava's show, but I think that was it. And he said when he drove across the border from Detroit, he said like the highways in Canada were, a lot of them were just paved and new. He said it was like entering another world, and he just loved it. He just knew that he wanted to stay there. So I thought that was kind of neat that early on, just coming into our country, he understood, his first impression obviously made a big impact because he wanted to stay all those years. In 1958, coming north, I had read that Conway Twitty had told him to go north because they wanted American bands playing up in Canada. So interesting stuff.
Very, very true, Dave. So after spending nearly 3 months in Canada, the band returned to the South with their base in Hawkins' hometown of Fayette, Arkansas. The band's gigs in the southern states were mostly one-nighters or short-run performances in Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Helm loved to drive. He would drive the band 200 or 300 miles to the next show in Hawkins' old Chevy, which Hawkins eventually replaced with a Cadillac towing a trailer containing their equipment. Oh, can't you see this 1958 Cadillac with the big fins on the back and the trailer carrying all their, wow. That's better than good.
At least they could afford the gas then.
Yes, hey, good point, Dave. Good point. Following the advice of Conway Twitty, who told him Canadian audiences wanted to hear rockabilly, Hawkins and the group began touring Canada, absolutely right, Dave, in 1958 as the Ron Hawkins Quartet. Now, their bassist, George Pullman, was abusing liquor and pills at the time, so Hawkins just left him behind. There's no excuse, no need for that. You're gone, Buster. You're out of here. The first gig was at the Golden Rail Tavern in Hamilton. Wow. Where, according to the booker, Harold Kulitz, all the bartenders quit when they heard the band's sound and saw Hawkins' stunts on the stage while his performance of the different dances he had. In 1959, he performed a number of live shows here in Canada and signed a 5-year contract with Roulette Records out of New York City. Now, working out of Toronto, Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks cut the LP Ronnie Hawkins in 1959, with Fred Carter Jr. taking Jimmy Luke Palmett's place on lead guitar. So what they did, they cut another LP, Mr. Dynamo, and that was the next year. Both of them recorded on the Roulette label. So when you're on the Roulette label at that period in time, you had made it. So subsequently, they moved to Canada. And in 1964, Ronnie Hawkins became a permanent resident here in Canada. In 2017, he moved from Stony Lake Manor in Drill Drummer, where he had resided since 1970, and he moved to Peterborough, Ontario, 2017. After the move to Canada, the Hawks, with the exception of Hawkins and drummer Levon Helm, dropped out of the band. Now, their vacancies were filled by southwestern Ontarians Robbie Robertson, Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and Garth Hudson, all of whom, along with Helm, they left Hawkins in 1964 to form a group which became to be named The Band. How good is that?
So they were with, how long were they with Ronnie? From what, 59 to 64?
59 to 64. Mm-hmm.
And they were all pretty young, like Danko. They were just young bucks.
Very young. They sure were.
But it was putting that time in, that 10,000 hours, really under Ronnie, the stage presence, right?
That's right.
And becoming excellent musicians.
Oh, every one of them in their own right. And there's another series we can look forward to doing a segment on the band.
Do you think that sound influenced, obviously, the rockabilly? Do you think that influenced the band? Like their sound is so unique.
Oh, it is.
It takes in so many different. It's got a little bit of a country feel. It's got a blues feel. It seems to take everything into account, which
it does. Yeah, certainly does. And I just about fell off my chair in shock the other night. I asked my wife Charlene, who is a Robertson, maiden name, are you related to Robbie Robertson? And she said, yes, I am. What? Why didn't you tell me? Oh my God. Anyway, yeah.
She's a distant relative?
Is a distant relative to Robbie Robertson.
That's pretty cool.
And that is the gospel right there.
And can your wife play guitar like him?
She's not musical in the sense of instruments, but she does have quite a nice voice.
Oh.
So, but anyway, back to
it. That's cool.
Yeah, I fell off my chair when I heard that. Anyway, in December of 1969, Ronnie Hawkins hosted John Lennon and Yoko Ono for the stay at his home in Mississauga during the couple's campaign to promote world peace. And John Lennon signed his erotic Bag One lithographs during his stay there. Lennon also did a radio promo for Hawkins' single, which was a version of the Clovers song Down in the Alley. So, hey, Now, when their visit ended, Lennon and Ockel and Hawkins and his wife, Wanda, as part of their entourage, took the CNR Rapido train to Montreal, where they engaged in their bed-in for peace at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, downtown Montreal. Now, Hawkins later rode with them on a train to Ottawa to see the then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. Lennon also enlisted Hawkins as a peace ambassador, and Hawkins traveled to the border of China and Hong Kong with journalist Richie York bearing an anti-war message. So how good is that?
I didn't know that. I knew about the visit to Toronto. I know they went.
Yeah,
they spent some time snowmobiling. Apparently, Hawkins and John Lennon, but I didn't know. I didn't know that he went to China, and I knew that he had visited Pierre Trudeau, but I didn't know. There's another story there I heard too, but we won't get into that one today.
In the early 1970s, Dave, Hawkins noticed guitarist Pat Travers performing in one of the Ontario nightclubs, and he was so impressed by this young musician, he invited him to play in his band. How good is that? So Travers joined the group, but balked when Hawkins told him he wanted him to play old 50s and 60s rockabilly tunes. Why would he balk at that? Well, here's the scenario. Years later, Travers told an interviewer he wanted me to play them exactly the same sound, same picking, same everything. But for a 20-year-old kid, that wasn't exactly what he wanted to do. But in retrospect, looking back, he said, you can do this, son, and you'll be a better than 100 other guitar players, because that is where it all comes from. You need to know this stuff, Ronnie said. It's like the basic fundamentals. And years later, Pat Travers had said, Ronnie Hawkins was right. Travers later had a very successful recording career and became an influential guitarist in the 70s in the hard rock music genre. How good is that?
Pretty cool.
Good for Travers. In 1975, Bob Dylan cast Ronnie Hawkins to play the role of Bob Dylan in the movie Ronaldo and Clara. The following year, he was featured performer at the band's Thanksgiving Day farewell concert at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, which was documented in the 1978 film The Last Waltz. So, look at all these famous people that Ronnie has touched base with. All the rockers, the best of the best. And
that was such a, for the last gathering of the band, such a tribute to have Ronnie on that stage with them. I believe he was the first performer that night, but that spoke volumes about those guys appreciating how far he had helped them get, and then them taking that next step to become the band. I thought that was really cool. When you watch the video, when you watch The Last Waltz, it's really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
And you could tell that Ronnie was just pumped to be out there on stage with those guys one more time. Right?
Yeah, tremendously pumped. Now, in 1984, Ronnie's LP, Making It Again, that garnered him a Juno Award as Canada's best country male vocalist, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to his career, Dave, as a musician, he also became an accomplished actor alongside his friend Chris Christopherson, another big name,
I know.
and in the action-adventure film Snake Eater. His version of the song Mary Lou was used in the 1989 slasher film Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night Number 2. So here we go. On January 10th, 1995, Ronnie Hawkins celebrated his 60th birthday by sponsoring a concert at Massey Hall in downtown Toronto, which was documented on the album Let It Rock. Now, the concert featured performances by Hawkins, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and of course, our own The Band. Canadian musician Jeff Healey also sat in on guitar as well. So Hawkins' band, the Hawks, or permutations of it, backed the performers. All of the musicians performing that night were collectively dubbed the Rock and Roll Orchestra. How good is that?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yep.
And there's a video on YouTube of that too. I've seen that in the past, and it's really good. So, folks, if you haven't checked it out, look for it and under Ronnie Hawkins, and you'll find it. It's just an amazing video to watch. Really enjoyable.
Absolutely. Yep. Very, very good. So, dismayed by several years of false starts in his own musical career, the singer-songwriter Ronnie took advice from Conway Twitty to launch a Canadian tour in 1958. And he swore the country was thirsty for bands who were eager to play smaller cities. So, without a recording contract in his homeland, Hawkins saw Canada as the promised land, an untapped market to sell his Memphis sound and build his reputation to the point of crossover success in the United States. And yes, his instinct was right. And by the end of the decade, Hawkins had 2 singles on the Billboard Top 100 charts, and he also appeared on Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
I saw that clip. Yeah, it was pretty cool. What year was that? 59?
That would have been 1959. Yep.
Yeah. And you know who else was on that show? I believe that show that he was on? Paul Anka.
Oh, Paul Anka, yeah.
Yeah.
Canada's own.
Yeah, so it's kind of neat, yeah.
Yeah, he's the Diana guy and Hold Me Till the Morning Comes guy.
I remember I saw an interview recently, I think it was a CBC interview, and they asked Ronnie Hawkins, and when you said the Dick Clark show, kind of reminded me, does he ever get nervous? And he said he's always nervous before he goes on stage. He said it's just, you want to please, you want to do good, you want people to like you, right? And I just thought it's kind of cool. The guy had been through so many years of rock and roll, still got nervous before he went on stage, right?
Yeah, that's very true of a lot of entertainers too, Dave. Yeah. To be a little nervous before you go on and perform wherever you're performing, that's a good sign, because that extra adrenaline pushes you to give the best to your audience.
So he's playing, like you said, he did the Dick Clark thing in the 60s. He's traveling around doing smaller venues. Mm-hmm. Is it right in that era? I believe in the early 60s, he was like playing the Summer Gardens in Port Dover.
That is correct. Yes,
so
absolutely.
All of a sudden you've got, like he said, there was this craving for it. I know my mom's mentioned that she saw them at the old Summer Gardens, and not to give away my mom's age, sorry, Mom. Mm-hmm. But, and just, I remember I asked her about it, and she said, oh, that Levon Helm, he was a cutie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and imagine you would know some. I'm not giving away your age either, Randy, but you would probably remember a bit of that, wouldn't you? That era?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I saw Ronnie Hawkins at Summer Gardens on a couple of occasions, and his stage persona was truly something else. Just amazing. Like high pump and just so professional. Really good times, good quality times.
Did he draw you in? Like what? Because like you said, he played a lot of covers. He didn't have any really big hits of his own. But was it just that magnetism with his stage presence that got people up and dancing, or what was it?
You got it, Dave. Yep. Stage presence. Ronnie Hawkins, he had it all and much, much more. Yep.
It's amazing when you start looking at some of the photos that I've seen online of the old Summer Gardens in Port Dover and some of the artists that went through there. We'll have to do a show someday on that. But it's just incredible that when you think about, there it is, the future. Ronnie Hawkins, literally with the band as his backup band at that era, and those guys went on to such world prominence.
Oh, absolutely,
it's incredible. And there they are playing in Port Dover.
Yeah. And the Summer Gardens, the reputation of the Summer Gardens, second to none. That was the dance hall in the area.
Kudos to the Ivy family too, Mr. Ivy, that did that made it such a place, that place to be really for a dance hall in that era.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Dave. Yep. Very, very good. Some called Ronnie Hawkins the father of Canadian rock and roll, partly because he welcomed the idea of bringing young musicians into his circle. And how many musicians would dare do that and try it? But Ronnie did.
He must have had such an eye for talent, eh?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of the musicians that he brought into his circle was, at that time, teenage David Clayton Thomas.
Oh, there's a name. Yeah.
Who attended Hawkins shows at the Rook Tavern on Yonge Street in Toronto, with hopes that the fiery musician might invite him to sit in with his band. Well, it happened one afternoon when Hawkins granted him an opportunity to sing a tune on stage. Look out, here comes David Clayton Thomas. Wow.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
So, you got it. The performance led the bar's owner to offer Clayton Thomas a longer gig years before he became the Grammy Award leading vocalist of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. How good is that?
just giving that opportunity to so many Canadians, right? Like Canadian musicians. It's kind of interesting that that's the influence that Ronnie had on Canadian music, right there, like you said. So it's incredible. Like all this mentoring he was doing, I guess, musically was paying off for all these guys.
Absolutely, Dave. And as David Clayton Thomas said, this is how everything started for me. Ronnie was so supportive. And later that year, when David Clayton Thomas' teen band dissolved, Hawkins was very quick to offer his support immediately to David Clayton Thomas. And so there's just a few youngsters that Ronnie has helped over the years. And not everyone, though, was so lucky. Hawkins also had a reputation for rejecting the underperformers or underlings who didn't mesh well with his band or weren't a good fit for his band. And that's certainly understandable. Certainly understandable. Now, Grammy Award-winning producer David Foster, we all know David Foster, was one of the many who was booted by Hawkins for falling short of his expectations. Wow. He said, "You look like a cadaver on stage. I want people to look like they're having fun. You're not having any fun making my music. So, no, I want people to smile and enjoy. People that are performing in my band on stage can see we're all having fun. Right. I don't want them to all look like cadavers." So, exit David Foster.
Well, I did not know that story. Holy heck.
So he fired me, but they've maintained their friendship over the years. He's just one of those guys that attracts good musicians. We all still bow to him. He's not a great musician. He's not a great singer. He's not a great songwriter. He's a great entertainer, and he's full of life, and he taught all of us a tremendous amount. He was a World Book Encyclopedia of musicians.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, eh?
Yeah. Throughout Ronnie's career, Dave, something I want to share with the audience, he wrote roughly 500 songs and received numerous accolades and awards. And in 1982, he won a Juno for the Best Country Male Vocalist for the album Legend in His Spare Time. And he was also honored with a star, I didn't know this, with a star on Canada's Walk of Fame in October of 2002. And that's where the Tragically Hip's Rob Baker thanked Hawkins because he took aspiring musicians and marinated them. And that's exactly what he did.
I like that, yeah.
that is so true to form. In 2002, Ronnie Hawkins had a cancerous tumor removed from his pancreas. Just 3 months after undergoing quadruple bypass heart surgery. This was 2002, 20 years ago. The story was captured in a 2004 TV documentary, Ronnie Hawkins, Still Alive and Kickin', in which he mused one day about meeting the big rocker in the sky. Oh, dear. Within a month, the singer announcing his recovery, former U.S. President Bill Clinton, Foster, and Paul Anka joined a slew of Hawkins' friends for a party in Toronto. The trio sang a tribute version of My Way to the rocker, and how appropriate is that? Of course,
you get the Bill Clintons from Arkansas, and they go way back. And I've seen photos of those two guys together, and you kind of wonder what kind of trouble they were getting into. So there you go.
Absolutely. And here's a note for our listeners too. A lot of people may not know this. Paul Anka wrote the song My Way for Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And that was a quadruple mega hit for Frank.
The story behind that one, I saw an interview with Paul Anka, and Sinatra had asked him to rate something, and he wrote that, and Sinatra loved it because Sinatra at that time was going to retire. So Paul Anka thought, well, this is very fitting.
Yeah.
I did it my way. And then
that's right.
Said a couple of years later, Sinatra called him and said, well, I'm not retiring. Can you rate me another song?
Exactly.
It was so big. Yeah. Sorry, folks, we got off topic there for a minute, but that's Randy and I. We go down the rabbit hole pretty easy when it comes to other musicians, it seems sometimes. Yeah. Sorry about that, Randy.
No worries at all, Dave. So basically, Paul Anka was saying he took me and my band in like we were family. Ronnie Hawkins, I meant to say. And singer Chris Christopherson also agreed, and he thought it was a wonderful tribute to Hawkins, having his memory from the Juno Awards and also his name in stone there. If there is a rock and roll god, I know he looks just like this guy, quote, unquote, Chris Christopherson. Wow. That's powerful.
And him and Chris Christopherson were longtime friends, too. I don't think a lot of people knew that, but him and Ronnie Hawkins were really close friends.
Yep. Absolutely. And Ronnie Hawkins passed away about 2 weeks ago. It was the early morning it was Sunday, May the 29th, 2 weeks ago yesterday, at the ripe old age of 87 years young. The cancer had returned. He is survived by his wife, Wanda, of 60 years, their two sons, Ronnie Hawkins Jr. and country singer Robin Hawkins, who has served as his guitarist since the 1980s, and of course, daughter Leah Hawkins, an aspiring songwriter who has been his backup singer. So we really congratulate, we bless the late Ronnie Hawkins for introducing to Canada the music genre of rockabilly. And he's had a lot of hits. Dave, could you suggest maybe a couple of favorites of yours that Ronnie's?
It's the 40 days after I realized what he had done with that was pretty cool, and how he made that his own. I thought that was, that was pretty neat. The way I think it was just the way he took the 30 days, turned it into 40, and had some fun with it. But I recently came across a video, Randy, and I'll try and post it after our podcast. I'll try and get it up so people can follow the link. But it was done August of last year, 2021, and it involved Ronnie Hawkins, Chris Christopherson, Gordon Lightfoot, and Willie Nelson.
Wow.
And they did Me and Bobby McGee. And I thought, I watched it and I thought, four legends. I mean, really, four enormous legends paying tribute really with Ronnie. And Ronnie was doing the lead vocals on this. And man, it kind of caught me. The first time I saw it, it was like, oh, wow. It kind of takes your breath away a bit to understand the company that he ran in, the people that appreciated him, the style of music that he sort of created for Canada or brought to Canada, and his influence on, like you said, so many different musicians. So for me, it's kind of, that hit me and Bobby McGee. And that was obviously Chris Christopherson wrote that. What a great song. So they did it. And I'll try and post that. But that resonated with me, just seeing how much the friendship between those four were and listening to it. It was a touching moment. And I got to remind folks too, on YouTube, lots of great places to go and watch Ronnie Hawkins interviews over the years. Do yourself a favor and do it. I mean, our show's great, but see the man himself and listen to some of the stuff that he had to say. It's pretty interesting. And his background, like you and I had talked about, coming through and doing what he did, amazing. His influence on like the band, obvious. I mean, the biggest of all. But how about you, Randy? Is there any song that stands out for you?
Well, like yourself, Dave, 40 Days. There's another song that was recorded in 1970 by Ronnie Hawkins. Great little song. If you get a chance to hear it, this song has to vie for me as one of my top songs done by Ronnie Hawkins. Home from the Forest.
From the Forest.
May of 1970.
I'll have to look that up.
Great little song, and it's a toe tapper. It's got everything. Just love that song. I could hear it 100,000 times and never tire of it. It's a great song. Home from the Forest, 1970. 40 Days, his big hit. Mary Lou, Bo Diddley. We're looking at 40 Days, 1959. Mary Lou, 1959. Days Gone By, 1995. So Ronnie, over 500 songs. He had a lot of great hits, a lot of good memories to keep us in tune with his music, rockabilly genre of music.
Can I ask one question before we just because I think with your business and being a DJ, I know that you probably don't get a lot of requests for his music, but did his music have that dance beat that you're always looking for?
Absolutely. In the dance beat of the rockabilly, which is very danceable to regular dancing, and also it's the main dancing rockabilly. That's the main dance for line dancers.
That's so cool.
In addition to some of the other songs like Bo Diddley, that fills the dance floor all the time. What else? Stuck in Lodi. Okay. That's kind of close to the Creedence Clearwater Revival revision of Lodi. So his songs really on the dance floor. There's not one bad song you can't dance to.
There it is right there.
I rest my case.
I got to thank you for doing this today. I'm glad we took the time and we had the opportunity to talk about Ronnie Hawkins and sort of the legend, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for doing all great research again, Randy. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. Randy, how can they get a hold of you if they're looking for a DJ? Classy FM, right?
Well, you can go to my business email, www.all lowercase RH at classy with a K, classyfmdj.com.
There it is, folks.
We're good to go.
We're good to go. Thanks for doing this today, bud. You take care. And we got lots of stuff to talk about for next month. Hope you folks will join us. Take care, Randy.
Sounds good, Dave. Glad really working with you again on this production of the late Ronnie Hawkins. I know the audience enjoyed it. Take good care, Dave. Have a good week and drive safely on those roads.